Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to address several questions around product managers. I got asked those questions quite often, so I decided to make a video so that I can answer all the questions in this video. So firstly, about like the different forms of product managers, or kind of like in job postings, you saw different variants of product managers. What do they mean? So, for example, like you see roles called product marketing, you see roles like inbound product manager, outbound product manager, customer proposition manager, technical product manager, data product manager. So in general, these roles are all product manager roles. However, there's the focus of those roles are different. So for example, a product marketing product manager might be focusing more around like market research, look at competitors' products, look at their customer base to try to figure out what features they need to add. A data product manager might be focusing on like using data analytics to figure out what feature needs to be added to the product. And then at the same time, they also develop product features that help them to capture more data. And outbound product manager may also have some responsibilities of customer support or client service. Inbound product manager and technical product manager, they might be similar. Those roles will focus more on the like product design, product development, and the technical part of the product management lifecycle. So all those roles that I just talked about, they can be all in one role depending on the size of the company. If the company is relatively small, one product manager could be doing all that I just mentioned about, plus could be also doing UI, GUI design and user experience design. And also it depends on the type of the business. So for example, retail business and the 2B business can be quite different. Now coming to the second question, what does a product manager do and why they are always very busy? So I think it's related to the first question, but I will take an example of an all-in-one product manager to show how much a product manager needs to do. So externally, the product manager, for example, like have to look at the overall market strategy, like kind of go-to-market strategy, and look at competitor and look into competitors' products. And then they also need to, for example, like if there's opportunity, they need to talk to the customers. I will cover human-centered design in the future, but like there are different techniques that you can figure out the requirements from the customers. You may need to conduct workshop or do surveys. So there's a lot to do around that market research, customer research part. So that's external. And then internally, you have to define your product roadmap, product strategy, which needs to be aligned to the company strategy, or even sometimes your product, or not sometimes, or most time, your product release needs to align with the commercial offering of the company. So everything needs to go hand in hand. So you can see that internally on the high level, you need to get your roadmap ready and then get all the high level lined up for your product release, or just product feature release. And on the working level, you need to figure out how you can break down the roadmap so that the roadmap can become deliverable. So you will have different product features. Let's say they're in the form of user stories and then they roll up into Apex. So you have those user stories in your product backlog. So you need to prioritize the user stories that will help you to achieve certain goal by certain time. And once these items are prioritized, you need to work on So like if you're the only one in the team, then you have to also work on like enriching those user stories. A good user story will tell the agile team the feature they need to do, or the feature they need to build, and how to build the feature. Um, but it also depends on the team. Like, I think like when the team is set up, there should be an agreement how detailed a user story should be. So like in my case, because our developers are they're not very experienced, so our user stories are very detailed about like every step they need to take to build the feature. Sometimes it even includes pseudocode. But if your developers are very experienced and could also be the domain expert, and then I think the user stories doesn't need to be very detailed. You can just say that, oh, the new feature will provide the user the opportunity to pay in this to check out in this page, something like that. And then the very experienced developers, they can figure out how they want to build it themselves. But if the development team is inexperienced, then the product manager needs to spoon feed them with a lot of details. It could also involve you a GUI mockup. So the user story could have a GUI mockup too, and sometimes the GUI mockup needs to also provide details like what's a margin and what color code the developer need to use and so on. So that's all like should be agreed under the team depending on the experience, the skill sets of the team. And then the user story also need to contain exit criteria, which tells the developer the final goal they need to achieve, and also tells the testers what they need to test to make sure this feature can become shippable. One thing to note is earlier I mentioned that the user story needs to be prioritized first, and then the product manager starts to enrich it, right? So there are other ways to do it. So for example, like some companies, they could enrich the user stories first and then go through that prioritization. So it really depends on your company situation, what kind of people you have, how much resource you have. For me, I think it makes more sense that it's prioritized first, then the product manager start working on it. Especially as I mentioned in my case, because the developers are relatively inexperienced, so there's a lot of work for the product manager to do to enrich it. That's why I prefer to prioritize it first, and then the product manager can start working on it. It goes back to actually maybe a loophole in the agile concept, or it's just missed out, is like how this kind of analysis and the design phase or design time can fit into the 2 week sprint, because sometimes it takes much longer to get the requirements ready. So I can talk about how my team does it. We do kind of a rotation to sort out this problem, and when we do the 2 week sprint, it's more about the design. It's more about the development and testing time. But for analysis and design, we don't consider it then in the 2 week sprint. We do it kind of outside of the sprint cycle. Once a user story is completed, the product manager can walk through the requirements with the dev team and the testing team, so that firstly, the team needs to understand the requirements. Secondly, they need to provide the effort estimation. Once that's done, then basically the user story is ready for sprint planning meeting. So during the sprint planning meeting, we look at the user stories that are done. That means like have all the details and already got the effort estimation. Then we make a decision, see whether they can fit into a sprint, then make a decision. Say, okay, like for this sprint, we're going to deliver those user stories. And then when the developers and testers are working on those user stories, they will always seek product managers' advice on for clarification. And then for the testers, when they design the test cases or when they write the test cases, they will also check with the product managers to make sure all the scenarios are covered. When the features are developed for the first time, we mainly use functional testing, which is manual testing. So automation testing come more, at least for us, we use it more for regression purpose. So after the developers finish developing the product and the testers finishing testing the product, the product manager may need to do a final round of testing to make sure everything is in place. And then the product manager also needs to write release notes. But it depends on sometimes certain sprint doesn't result in a release, then they don't need to do that. But if this sprint results in an external release, then they need to draft the release note and then send it out through certain channel or get it approved by the leadership team and send it out. Slightly before or after the product or feature release, the product manager usually also needs to conduct training either internally or externally or both. So internally to train the support staff or the front office support staff or the frontline, and externally maybe train the users, train the customers directly. Sometimes a product manager also needs to help with the debugging process because they know the product probably better than anyone else. And sometimes some product managers, especially for 2B business, they also involve in pitching the product to the customer, or maybe they need to convince the potential customer of their product roadmap. In some companies with multiple products or giant products with multiple modules, the product managers might be in charge of the P&L too, but that's an organizational decision. So they could be in charge of the P&Ls, and they have a say in terms of how many sales people they can hire, how much resource they can allocate to promote their own products, because they all come out from their P&L. These are the common tasks that a product manager may be asked to do. It really depends on what type of product manager role it is. Is it an inbound one, or is it a product marketing one, or data product manager, or more of a inbound technical type of product manager? To help the work easier, a product manager can have different tools to make their life easier. So I will skip the human-centered design toolkit. I will make a separate video to just talk about that. So these toolkit will help with market and customer research. In this video, I will mainly talk about the Confluence and the Jira. In general, a product manager will spend a lot of time on Confluence and Jira, especially when they're more junior. So in my team, we capture the requirements in Confluence, and we only use Jira as a ticketing system to assign the tasks to developers and testers, and then also to generate management information or Scrum stats from Jira, so that we can measure the progress and the velocity. I'm not able to demo the screen from my work laptop, so I will just show you through my iPad by drawing. So let's say you have this Confluence page. So Confluence is more of a kind of documentate. So you can imagine it as your Word document, like in the past. in the waterfall delivery world, we write documents in the Word, like, or in, just say maybe in the past, we use Word document to capture our requirements. So now we have this new tool called Confluence. And the good thing about Confluence in comparison to Jira is Confluence is, you can see I'm using this kind of like, this is a document, right? While Jira is like small piece, like different small pieces. And with the small pieces, like you have requirement 1, 2, 3, or maybe 1.1, 1.2. So basically your requirement, if you use Jira to capture your requirements are all over the place. And at the end, when your Jira number grow to like 10,000 or even more, you lose the holistic picture of what you have built. And in the and throughout the time, maybe one feature has evolved into multiple stage. So let's say this requirement 1.2 has been evolved like 4 times, and it's very hard for you to find which requirement is the most updated one, or which requirement was eventually built into the system. Give you the holistic picture of what's going on. But if you use Confluence, you basically have all your requirements built into this one page. But this one page is a modern page, which gives you like kind of index. So on the left, you can have your index. So let's say if you are building an application, which has multiple groups of features. So let's say you have feature number 1, and then under number 1 you can have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, or even under 1.3 you can have 1.3.1, 1.3.2, and all these are like high. So for example, higher level, this is a higher level requirement, this is a bit lower level, and this is even at much lower level, right? So these are the kind of index, and then you can have your detailed requirements in this page. So say let's say this is your requirement 1.2, 1.3.1. So when you click this 1.3.1 here, you come to this page called 1.3.1, and then you can write your requirements here. So you have your user stories, and the user story will be like the user can do what, right? And then you can have your GUI design here. Say that your UX designer or you yourself has mocked up a screen of let's say shopping catalog, and here you have a drop down menu. So this is your GUI mockup, and then you have your exit criteria. And then at the bottom there's a comment section. So like let's say your developers and testers, they read your requirement and they still have some questions, they can ask in the comment section, say hey, Mr. Product Manager, can you tell me this is this? And then you can respond. Right, so all the communications can be captured here too. So in the future, maybe like sometimes people ask a question and they got the answer. However, they forgot the answer. They always remember that, oh, I have the question. I thought it was not answered. But they can always refer back to the session to make sure that, oh, actually the product manager has already answered this question for me.
right? So this is very clear. And then if you, let's say you have your feature 1.4, then it will open another page, let's say 1.4, right? So these are all like hyperlinks. So the hyperlink will lead you to different page. And this is a relatively simple page. Some of my colleagues, they make it even more complicated. So instead of, let me change one color. Instead of having 1.3.1, 1.3.2, they will just have 1.3, and then when the hyperlink is open, it's actually page 1.3, and then they will have 1.3.1 here, and then they also have 1.3.2 here, 1.3.3. So all those sub features, or like smaller user stories, they all fit into one page instead of having multiple hyperlinks. I think it really depends on your company's needs. If you have relatively big requirements, you may want to use the first method I showed, do more hyperlinks and make it neat. But if the requirements are relatively small, then maybe you can fit them in one page, because Confluence also provide this nice feature, say that, okay, although you have 1.3.1, 1.3.2, 1.3, it generates a table of content here, which helps the audience to navigate within the page. So it will just, if you link you here, link you there, link you there. So it's very convenient, right? And I think like even if there's a feature update, the team should continue updating this page to make sure that it captures always the relevant information. So let's say after 1 year, someone found that this 1.3.1 is outdated and they want to make a change. So the way how I would do is I will still keep this 1.3.1 session, and I will add some comment below, say that update on, let's say, June 27, 2021, and then I will say what I have updated. And then maybe you probably also update the exit criteria. So basically at the bottom of the page, you can always see the most updated feature. Right. So this is a Confluence page. And then how we link it to Jira. So just now I mentioned that we use Jira as a ticketing system. What that means is we use it to assign the tasks to the developers. So for example, like this user story 1.3.1, I will, it depends on how you break it down. It can be broken down into maybe 5 different Jiras. I mean, it really depends on the size, how you guys do it. There's no answer, like no right answer to all, right? So let's say this one is split into 5 Jiras. So I will, at each part, like relevant part, let's say user story statement 1 or first sentence, I will say link, I will say Jira link, and then I will provide the link of Jira 1, right? And in Jira 1, I will do another link. So basically Jira 1, I say that, okay, I have this user story, and then I will create some details, and then I will say refer to Confluence page for details. So this page. So the developers know that, let's say developer A got assigned this user story, and he opens this user story and sees this link say, "Oh, refer to this Confluence page," and then he will look at this requirement in this Confluence page. I think I should just make this arrow going here. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this arrow should go here. So just say you go to this Confluence page, look at this requirement, then you know what you are going to do for this user story. And the same with user story 2. There will be a link from here to user story 2, and then user story 2 have a link back. It's getting a bit messy now. The screen is too small. Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is don't write too much detail in Jira because they're going to kind of get lost eventually. So try to put more focus on documenting things in Confluence, and Jira is just a tool for you to assign the task to the developers and testers, and then during and after each sprint, the Scrum Master is able to get some stats out of Jira. That's basically all what Jira can give you. One thing that I think I wasn't able to explain very clear or maybe made it a bit confusing is the level, like how much a user story or how much a feature can be broken down. Let me just open a separate page and then just do it this way. So you will have your product roadmap. And the product roadmap is at like very much at high level, right? Because it could be a multi-year roadmap, like 2021, 2022, and like it's basically goes by Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Right, so this is the product roadmap. And then you have the Confluence page where I was saying that you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, then 1.1, 1.2, and then can even have one more level. Right. So it really depends on how big your application is and how you guys agree to break down. Like there's no correct answer there's no correct answer. It really depends on what suits your company the most. So let's say I can do it this way. I can say I have this feature group. So this is feature group. Feature group means like really high level feature group. So for example, if I'm a online shopping website, I can say this is my product catalog. And then feature group 2 can be like checkout or payment. Feature group 3 can be something like at the backend settlement. So you can see like these are very, very big topic on the high level. And then you can decide, say that, okay, for my MVP, I have this 1.1, which I must deliver for my MVP, which is going to be in Q1, right? And then for this 2, I have this 2.1, and then I maybe just need this 2.1 for my MVP in Q1. And then a settlement, maybe I have this 3.1. So I have this 3.1 and then 3.2 and I have 3.1.1 3.1.2, 3.1.3. So maybe for MVP, I feel like I just need a very simple kind of settlement function. So instead of going for the higher level, I just go for this even lower level. Say, okay, this 3.1.1 is enough to deliver my MVP, right? And then this number 4, maybe we just decide that, okay, this feature group number 4 is not needed for MVP at all, right? So then for MVP, it's clear that we need these three things, right? So then it comes to Jira, how we're going to break down the Jira. So in Jira, we also have the epic. So yeah, now I'm going to say again, it really depends on your company. So the epic can be, I would say it can just be your feature group. So for example, my feature group is product category. So I can just say the epic is product category. No, sorry, product catalog. And then for the user stories, I think there are 2 ways to do it. As I mentioned, depending on the size. So this 1.1 can be one user story. So this is one solution, and it could also be multiple user stories. If multiple user stories, it's equal to multiple Jiras. Okay, so then another breakdown is for each Jira, or each user story, you can break down the tasks and then subtasks. So these are usually done by the dev lead after the user story is assigned. So dev lead and the test lead, they will create tasks and the subtasks and assign to their team. And so, as I mentioned, it serves as a kind of ticketing or assignment purpose. And then also it gives you management information or Scrum stats. It helps the Scrum Master or the leads to manage the team's performance and notice any obstacles in advance. So that's basically all I want to say about Confluence and Jira. So after going through the process of how to do it, I'm going to cover why we need to use Confluence and the Jira, or mainly why we need to use Confluence to capture the requirements. So the first benefit I think I mentioned, and it's quite obvious, is like you need to have all the feature description or requirements in one place, neat and organized, so it's very easy for people to refer to, especially if you have new joiners in the company. It's easy to just point them to the documentation so they understand what has been built in the system or what is going to be built in the near future. And the second point is, I think a lot of startups, they don't realize it, is when the product or the platform exceeded certain size, if you don't have proper documentation, it's very hard to maintain it because no one remembers everything, especially like over the time key talent may have left or moved roles, right? So after maybe let's say 3 or 4 years,
if the knowledge is lost and there's no proper documentation, the platform becomes unsupportable. And then I think in some organization, they're just going to say, oh, this application doesn't work. We're going to invest another several $1,000,000 to build a new one. However, if you think about it, if at the beginning you have proper documentation, every time there's new joiner, they are properly trained and they can refer to the documentation, one application maybe can be used for a much longer time. I'm not saying we shouldn't keep the technology updated, but I'm just trying to say that sometimes you don't need to sunset an application so fast if it's properly supported. So another benefit is when you have this functional requirements all in one place, it's easy for debugging because modern software uses a lot of packages. So I remember reading through one of the tech specs before my dev lead left. Um, like I was going through the 70 something page tech specs, and it's very hard to understand because in development they use a lot of packages, and he always say that refer to this package or refer to the other package, and after referring so many times I just get lost. So I think if I'm going to debug, the easy way is to start with the functional specs first to identify where that bug potentially come from, and then look into the code, so it gives you a direction of where to go. The next question I got is how to migrate the old product specs from somewhere else to Confluence. Before answering this question, I actually have a question. Like, do you have a very comprehensive or complete or nicely written or organized product spec somewhere else? If the answer is yes, then that's basically a copy paste question, right? But I think most of the challenge come from like maybe in the past there was no such specs, or there are things all over the place. Then it requires a lot of efforts to consolidating things to get them into one place, and they sometimes even need to check the code to see, oh, which requirement was actually implemented, or which requirement was the current implementation, and some other requirement might be old already. So I think this may take a lot of effort. I can think of two approaches depending on the resource or the time you have, right? One approach is if I'm going to hire a new product manager anyways, I'm going to give this task to him or her as the first task to basically figure out what has been built in the product and then document he or her learning in the way of user stories or product features. So then you basically have the base of this Confluence specs. And the second approach is like, if you don't have time or resource to do that, you don't need to rush it. You only write on the page when you have a feature update. So for example, like I don't need to still use the same example of the product catalog. So I don't need to uh, write down what has been built for the product catalog. But every time when I update the product catalog, say that, oh, I'm going to add this button or that button, then you start kind of like writing more than just what you're updating. You can just write something like, oh, in the past it was built this way, and now we're going to add this. So then just every time a little bit more effort. Then over the time, when all the kind of uh, group of features were touched, then you may have updated even like 70 or 60% of the feature descriptions or specs
then you're quite good. Then just need to put a bit more effort during the downtime, like for example Christmas time, or I mean depends on the industry when is your downtime, right? Put a more effort during the downtime to get the remaining 20 to 30% of feature descriptions there, then you're done.
One more important thing to note is when I say Confluence and Jira, I kind of said like I would like to say it in a generic way. It doesn't mean that I'm recommending these two tools from a certain brand. They are more of a representation of certain tools, which may have different, maybe produced by different companies, but the purpose is like Confluence is kind of this knowledge space where people can collaborate and work on requirements together. And then Jira is this kind of ticketing tools. Yeah, so it's just a generic name that I try to be brand. I want to be brand agnostic.
Just realized this video is quite long, so I'm just going to stop here. If there are more questions, please let me know in the comment, and I can make another video to answer the other questions. Thank you for listening. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification.